you need to tell us how he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It really was by fire, but she said thermal ionization. Thermal ionization, that's like nuclear.
It has to do with tremendous heat. And of course, the modern method of producing this kind of heat is thermonuclear devices. But anyway, what we have found, and your audience can see in just a moment, Susan, is that there are millions of spheres of sulfur that are scattered all through these ashes, much like pepper in gravy or something. It's just in there like a rain would fall. I think you
Why
might
don't you grab
be.
one of those? Can you pick that up?
Bring the plate over, I think. We put these on a wonderful china dish here.
All right.
Seems kind of strange.
These came in varying sized spheres of sulfur. The fact that they assume a spherical shape shows that they came through the atmosphere. Now, volcanoes produce some sulfur, but this is laid out in a strata. Never exceeds 30% purity. This stuff is 96% pure sulfur. The other ingredients are metals, which cause it to burn much hotter than just plain sulfur would burn. Each of these spheres are encapsulated with burnt sulfur, showing that all of them were on fire. This could have been accomplished by the friction, heat of the friction as they entered and came through the atmosphere.
What would happen if we set a match to that?
If you set a match to this, this would burn and chase everybody out of here, because burning sulfur is unparalleled for schmelliness. Also, it would disintegrate this plate, and we'd have a China syndrome right here on stage.
It's very hot.
Because it would burn its way through everything that you see here.
Now, is there much of this there in those sites?
Millions and
It's
millions
everywhere.
of them.
All right. Why don't we see some of that? We've got some footage that shows how God actually rained brimstone, which is what sulfur is. Is that right?
That's what Webster's dictionaries and the encyclopedia, when you look up brimstone, it says burning stone or sulfur.
Okay.
Burning stone. Coming your way.
Is sulfur. That is in most of them. Now, the ones that do not have sulfur in them, and this one we just took a bunch of sulfur out and put it in our specimen bag. But the ones that don't have sulfur have a very black center where they have, where it's been very hot. So now we'll move in on this one where there is some sulfur still present, and back off just enough so you can see what we're up to here, and we'll go collect that sample in a bag. Before I started using this knife, it was very, very sharp. Okay, here this is, and we have collected some more, and it smells and tastes like sulfur. Now, the Bible tells us that it rained fire and brimstone upon the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, what you see in front of you here is the results of large and small, well, varying sized chunks of sulfur, burning sulfur that have hit. And what we find here is that God rained this burning sulfur down upon this city, and rain is a perfect description of it. It landed just in the pattern that rain would fall, and the stuff, of course, the accumulative heat of all of this upon the city set the entire thing ablaze. The flash point
of every material there, metal, stone, of course the people, and everything burned. And this sulfur continued to burn, and it vitrified the material around it after it had burned it all up.
Goodness. Now, how much of this did you find around the area? This is just a small piece of that tape, but how much did you find?
We found at each of these 5 locations just unlimited quantities of these spheres. They're at all depths. These things would penetrate anything that they hit. They would penetrate stone, wood, even metal. And we have found vitrified gold out there that has been vitrified and
Like vaporized.
vaporized, exactly. We have found the crystals that gold, when it is vaporized, turns into these salts. And we, of course, found those with our electronic systems. And so we also found parts of human skeletons that were all burnt and gnarled. There is no doubt at all that these are the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah, and that they were burnt with tremendous heat.
This happened like 3,000, 4,000 years ago. It wasn't something of that.
That's right. It was about the same distance before Christ, back in the BC area, as we are on the after Christ AD period.
Why do you think other people had not noticed this, and do people recognize your find as legitimate?
Well, there are, you can tell them about.
Okay, well, when Ron first, I was at home when he first went over there and made kind of the announcement, kind of verbalized it. He called me up and he says, well, I think I found Sodom and Gomorrah. And my reaction was, sure.
Yeah, right.
And he says, I've been driving past these sites 40 or 50 times because he has to go past them to go to another site he's working on. But the thing was, is that he says, I don't know how I could convince anybody else of them, because right now all they are is just shapes. And so he came home, and Greg Brewer, what we didn't show on there was a film of a guy, Greg Brewer, that went with us one time. He could just reach in there and grab this ash and go like this, and it would just disintegrate like talcum powder. It is ash. So anyhow, he made arrangements to go back in October of 90. Took Richard Reeves with him, and we were praying for some sort of evidence that would prove that this was Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, the situation is that a tremendous amount of erosion has taken place, and the sulfur capsules have been broken away, and the sulfur balls are laying all around the ground, and they're covered in ash, so they just look like lumps. In 1990, when he went, it had just rained, and that is very unusual. They get less than 1/4 of an inch of rain a year. The rain had caused that big chunk that y'all saw laying on the ground to fall, and inside this freshly fallen material, him and Richard came upon it, and there were all these reddish rings with all the sulfur balls. Then they began to look around and note, then they knew what to look for.